All right, everyone, welcome to our second Amplify Women in Sales event. We are so excited to have Adobe here with us today to talk about leadership and amplify these amazing women. We have Jessica Holmes on the line, and I believe we are about to begin. I see that we have a large majority of business professionals on the line with us, TCU alumni and students. So thank you all for being here. We're so excited. And we cannot wait to hear what Jessica Holmes and her team has to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. I am so excited to be here and to have this opportunity. So thank you to Alexa and the team at TCU for allowing us to come and meet with you. As Alexa mentioned, my name is Jessica Holmes. I'm very excited to continue this conversation that TCU Sales Center and Erin Cazales started a few weeks ago. Amplification is all about women helping women, having each other's backs and giving support. And I am excited to spend this next hour with you and with some of the women who have helped me shine in my role here at Adobe. Being a woman in sales is very tough. Being a leader, a female leader in sales is definitely not for the faint of heart either. And so I wanted to spend some time during today's discussion where we can learn from these incredible women, right? How did they make that transition from contributor to leader and uncovered their unique strengths that have set them apart and allowed for that collaborative and engagement in their team environment? So before we get started, last thing to note, we want you to be interacting with us throughout this entire session, right? Send your questions in via the chat mode. We'll answer them as we go along. We'll have some more polls come and go so we can get to know you as well. But let's make this a conversation across all of us. Sound good? So let's start with a bit of intros. I am very happy to introduce you to, I would consider, my great team of female leaders here at Adobe. We have Kristen Hansen-Ream, Christine Collins, and Tamara Goley joining us today. So let's start just getting to know them a little bit. Kristen, can you walk us through your career path?
Yeah, hi everyone. Super excited to be here today. So I have been fortunate enough to really spend the majority of my career at Adobe. So I first started out retail sales, then came in to Adobe as an intern. So you can imagine the learning curve going from retail to technology sales was huge. And took me a long time to really kind of figure out what was going on, but was able to do that, came back full time as the SDR BDR role, and then decided to move into a program management role. So Adobe started to really invest in our inside sales organization and wanted to scale the team, scale the digital experience business. So I decided to move into that role, really help with our tech stack, helping enable our team, and just really help programatize, all the different elements of our inside sales organization. So I did that for about 3.5 years. Then about 1.5 years ago, I came back from maternity leave and moved to a senior program manager role where now I'm dedicated solely to our Adobe Sales Academy. So I have the privilege of working with our amazing university hires and helping in recruiting and hiring and then onboarding, enabling, and then as our students, or not students, as our university hires progress from SDR, BDR, ISR, I'm able to work with them, help them get onboarded, ramped, and progress to the field. Eventually, that's really the goal of our program and our team, is to get our hires into the field and be successful there. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. Thank you, Kristen. I love the uniqueness of coming in as an intern and growing your career in the exact same way we're trying to help others do within the Sales Academy. So she's a great representation of what we're looking for. Christine, tell me a little bit about your career progression.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I have had the privilege of being at Adobe for 3 years, but prior to Adobe, I started my career and in advertising, and I started in account management and realized that I didn't like being on the back end after, post sale. I really liked strategizing and getting in there and actually doing some of the selling. And so I transitioned into sales from there and from sales into sales management, and then came over to Adobe, where I started in managing our ASA group. So similar to both Jess and Kristen, started there, then quickly transitioned to being a business development rep manager. And that's where I've been for the last couple of years now. And really focused on, again, the development of those new hires, as well as really getting them ready for that next step. So that's where I am today.
Love it. Christine was actually one of the first people to interview me when I started at Adobe. So it was great connection right off, and I knew I had found a friend immediately. And last but not least, Miss Tamara Gully, great to see you. Can you give us some background about you as well?
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me as well. I also, similar to Christine, I actually think I started with Adobe like a month before her. So I've been here for 3 years, and it's been a wonderful ride. So I started out actually in criminal justice and working with at-risk youth, which was at the time, and still is, a huge passion. But I found my way to just realizing there was something a little bit more by way of competition or just things that I wasn't feeding in that path. So I did make a transition. I got into a marketing firm that linked me up with working with tech companies and telemarketing. And then from there, I just worked my way into lead generation and building teams. I started out, I would say my first tech company was demand-based, and I built a team from scratch there. And then I moved on to Lithium, and then on to Okta. And then I've arrived here at Adobe, and I've loved it. And I've been enjoying working alongside Jessica and Christine and Kristen. It's been wonderful. So that's what I'm doing currently.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, we're going to be as organic as we possibly can here. We are a fun group that we don't get to see each other often, so it might get a little silly or, a little too much grins as we're talking to each other. But I think you'll all appreciate these women and their diverse identities and experiences, right? We are women like you who have found a place in sales and in leadership, and not necessarily pointed towards that goal, but organically came across it, right? So I think we can relate to a lot of what you're doing here. Let's actually get to know you a little bit. Let's do a poll. Tell us about you. What type of role are you in today? Go ahead and fill that out. And as you're completing that, ladies, talk to me about the industry, tech, sales, Adobe and sales. Do you feel sales is respected and celebrated within our industry? And I'll open it up to any of you to answer.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting, and given the experience that some of us have had, just between our group, is being a part of Women in Sales Awards, the WISA group, and I think that that's something that really shines a light on just women in sales awards. Is exactly what it says. And so I think that, for one, is really starting to call out who's growing and succeeding, and sharing, what, again, who is doing so well, so that we can replicate that, and acknowledging them for that. So I think that we're definitely doing a better job there. And then I think from, an internal standpoint at Adobe, it's something that our company, I think, takes pride in really uplifting women. And as part of that, they've even created a program called Leadership Circles, in which they bring groups of women from, and it's not just for sales, but we were a part of the sales program portion. But that it's really there to help us hone in on what we're really good at, maybe some of the challenges we're facing, as women leaders. And so I think, you know, as far as my experience, both from an industry standpoint and from an internal standpoint, women are definitely being supported and highlighted in the sales world.
I love that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'd have to
I think, you know,
agree
sales
with
is
that
definitely
for
what makes the
sure.
world go around.
Mhm, mhm.
Tell
Yeah,
us
I
more,
mean, I
Tam.
think it's one of the first questions that I get when I'm interviewing anyone. It's, what's your experience as a woman in sales, and what has been, you know, your path to get to this point? I mean, of course, we all know that it's predominantly, you know, it's been predominantly men or male for the last however many years. So just trying to, you know, feel that excitement with people and make sure that, you know, I'm always paying it back to other women and trying to make sure that they understand that this is something that's well respected. It's something that you know, you do have an opportunity to go really far in. I mean, it's just, for sure, I would say for sure, it's well respected.
Love that. Thank you. Looking at our poll results, it looks like the majority of people are individual contributors. Got a great chunk of managers and a few leaders of leaders and students with us here. So I think, you know, our experience and the topics we're going to cover here today definitely relate to everyone that's here. And we'd love to hear from you. Again, remember, post some questions, give us your opinions and thoughts in chat as well. We'd love to hear from that as well. Okay, let's talk about what makes you unique. I think, you know, women in sales offer a lot of skills and attributes that men don't. I often joke, you know, I'm married, that my husband and I go on vacation. He gets up in the morning, he packs his suitcase and is ready to walk out the door. I, 3 weeks prior, have scheduled the dog sitter, made certain that the house was cleaned. I've packed the bags, checked in for the flights. I've done all of these multiple steps, right, to get prepared for that same moment to walk out the door and go on vacation. And I think a lot of that's just the woman brain, right? We're planners, we're always thinking 3 steps ahead. We're thinking about others as we go along. And those skills are very transferable to my job in sales and my job in sales leadership, right? And how I'm always thinking about, what does the team need? What's going to go wrong in this deal? How do I prepare in advance for those things? So to me, I feel like we as women have a lot of those unique attributes and skills. But I want to hear from you ladies about what is one of your unique strengths or characteristics. And I'm going to start with Kristen.
Perfect. So I am going to piggyback off what Jess just talked about, because I really do agree on that. You have to be able to take a step back and look at things from a strategic standpoint and say, okay, what needs to happen? What's our overall goal? But, you know, anyone can do that. Anyone can say like, oh, we want to have, you know, this amazing program. But you have to be able to sit back and think, what is everything that needs to happen in order for this to get accomplished? And then who do I need to work with? When does that need to happen? And you have to be able to map it out and have that timeline. And then you have to be like overly on top of things, right? You have to always know, okay, who do I have to follow up with? When does this need to happen for X, Y, and Z to be able to be accomplished? And that's very difficult, right? Especially when we look at Adobe and, you know, everything that's happening, especially with COVID right now. There are so many top priorities. Everything has become a priority, but you have to be able to, one, prioritize, and then know how to tactically go in and attack all of those different things, and then know how to use your resources really well to be able to get those things done. So those are kind of the things that I try to work on, try to always stay on top of. And especially, you know, with the Sales Academy and all the moving parts that happen with all the different elements of our program, we really have to be on top of that.
100%. Kristen, I think those are characteristics that have definitely set you apart and has just launched your career so quickly. And let's be honest, saved me and my career and helped me in so many ways. You know, she's always 4 steps ahead of me. I think I'm a planner, and Kristen is definitely even more so, which I absolutely love. You know, the whole definition of shine, right? Like, help others around you to make yourself look good, and those around you look good. And Kristen does that for me all day. I look amazing at work because Kristen, what she's doing. So definitely appreciate that. And it was a skill that I had noticed had set you apart when I first started 2 years ago. She was always thinking ahead and thinking about things that I needed when we didn't even really know each other, which I loved. So Tamara, I'm going to go to you next. Tell me about one of your unique strengths.
Yeah, I think for me, just in looking at, I would say even before Adobe, but also within Adobe, I pull from the fact that I have a track background, and a lot of like my competition desire comes from that, and also a lot of structure comes from that. So I think one of the strengths that's really helps me kind of push from point to point, and from like success to success with failure as well, is me trying to like define, really get a clear understanding on like what is needed, right? So what does success look like? What does the finish line look like? What is it that we're trying to achieve? What is it, specifically, like what are the, what's the parameters? So I take a lot of time with really digging into that and creating a picture, and then I'll set goals and like checkpoints for myself, and then I'll literally push myself through. So I think it's about the structure and really needing to understand, like, what does success look like for me? What does success look like for this company? Am I trying to build? Am I trying to grow? Like, what is it that I'm really trying to achieve? And then once I know that, then it's like, all right, let's get after it. So I think if I could, I wouldn't even be able to put that in one word, but that's kind of how I view myself in terms of like my unique offering to any business or company.
100% agree with that. And it definitely, that competitiveness comes out of you in such a fun way. She's always a winner. Okay, last but not least, Christine, tell us about yours, and then let's do some Q&A.
So I would say, something that I always kind of pick at that drives me is process. I'm a big process person. I am always looking at the machine. Is it working? How's it working? How's it, what can we fix? What are those potential solutions? How do we go solve them? Who do I need to bring in? Who do I need to lean on? Because I think in problem solving and process, you learn that you're not the expert. I may be able to find an issue, but that doesn't mean that I can solve it. And so, something that I've really worked hard at is knowing my resources, finding those experts, and then from there, building that machine. And in one way or another, it can be as simple as, setting up an email, or it could be from a whole comp model, that we work on as a team. So big changes, little changes, but I always found that if I focused on how the machine was working and how to, either amplify what's working and bring about, problem solving for what's not, I've found that if you can get the machine working, you're going to be more successful as a team and as a company. So process and problem solving.
Would agree with that. You do a great job of taking large processes even and breaking them down into such small detail and making it simple to accomplish. So it's helped me, and I've seen it help your teams. It's pretty fantastic. Alexa, are there any questions that we can answer from the group?
Yes, we have one from Carly. It's, how do you or have you overcome sometimes not being taken as seriously as other counterparts as a young female? And feel free to any of you answer that question.
Yeah, I can start on that.
Oh my gosh.
I think
I'll go right after you.
Sorry, Tam, I'll go quick. I'll just say, I definitely felt like I had to overcome that. I started at Adobe when I was 20, right? And it's so overwhelming, right? Being one of the only females and you're so young. So I would say I felt like I did have to hustle harder, right? You really do, because it's harder to make relationships. It's harder to connect with people. Like I couldn't talk to people about golf, and that's all they did, right? Everyone went golfing and I couldn't go because I didn't know how. So you really do have to work harder, but what can you do to set yourself apart? I think you have to be so on top of everything. You have to be hyper responsive and just really go above and beyond in everything that you do, in your presentations, in your emails, in your ideas. You really have to go in and just set yourself apart, because I feel like you do have to hustle harder. And Tam, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's actually kind of the point. So I think it's a cross between remaining very humble and also having, you still have to, of course, have something to prove, but understanding how to channel that energy, right? So you can't cower down, you can't get silent. You have to understand like the culture and the landscape, like how can I really represent myself well? How can I get my point across without coming across as too pushy? You know what I mean? It's definitely a dance, but you do still have to lean in and do it. But absolutely, I mean, it is, there's no easy answer to it. I started out building my own teams at startups when I was 25, and people were like, what is she here to do? She doesn't have a lot of experience in these other areas. But what I had was fight, and I had something to prove. I had the experience of understanding what it was to be a BDR. I had the experience of, speaking on the front lines with people in our prospects and our customers. So I had something, and I also understood the process as well, right? And wanting to make sure that we, figured out a better way to do things. So when you have that fire, you still have to push forward. And there's definitely, you're going to fail from time to time. You're going to fall, you're going to scrape up your knees, but you still, like, you get up and you continue to sit at the table across from people as if they are your partners, as if they're your peers. You do it respectfully, you do it humbly, and you continue to grow.
Definitely. Thank you guys for those answers. I think Michaela may have another question for you guys.
Hi, it's an honor to be here. So we have a question from Karen, who asked, where do you think a role in sales leads you long term? Do you envision being in sales for your entire career, or do you want to move across Adobe, across the organization?
I'll take that one. So I actually in college majored in finance. And so sales was not the path that I thought that I would be on. I thought, sounds bad, but I thought that I was more authentic than a salesperson. You think sales, you think car salesman, you think like sleazy, you think just that's not me. And what I found is it can be that. Obviously, I think we know that car salesman definitely hits some of those buckets, but what I found is that the relationships that you make, the experience that you have in growth in uncomfortable situations where you're challenged, and you're learning how to create value for whatever you're selling, I found that it became less about sales and more about, again, creating that value and that relationship, which ultimately brought the sale. So as I learned that, I thought, yep, I'm going to be in sales for forever. Or some way around it. And it's interesting that, moving from being a direct seller to a manager, you do move away a little bit from that customer piece. So am I selling every day? No, but my experience has led me to be able to help others with those skills that I had, and the foundation and the perception of what sales is sooner, that I wish I had that. And so, and then I think as far as long-term, I think it's so foundational that it really does give me the opportunity to go anywhere I want. And I love that, ability. But I think once you get that taste of what sales is and how the people interact and the relationships, I think it would be really hard to leave sales.
Thank you, Christine. We have one more question from Kim that's asking if you guys can touch about the importance of building and maintaining your network at every stage of your career and life, and how do you transition from a social relationship to a business relationship?
I mean, I can just say very quickly, relationships, I mean, your hunger, your desire, your hard work, your work ethic in general, like you setting your goals is ultimately what's going to keep you going. But your relationships are, I can't even stress how important they are. You know, not just not burning bridges, but of course, networking and maintaining those relationships. I think it's important to, from the time that you were a BDR and those folks that were around you, all the way up to like thinking about myself to when I was a team lead, and then I moved over into, you know, partner development, and I moved over into, like, I have to think about everybody that crowded around me in each one of those points and still keep in contact with them, understand what challenges they're facing, understand their wins, and just be able to network and collaborate, right? I think that I'm only going to be as strong, and we're only going to be as strong as our network and our sort of well of knowledge. You should be thinking about always trying to grow that, and you should be thinking about always trying to nurture that. I know that there were a couple people for me that really took ownership of the progression of my career, to mentors specifically, and I will always check on them. I will always check in with them, and I will always continue to, you know, try and generate more mentors, but thinking like, I can never get to a place where I feel like I no longer need them, right? I can never get to a place where I no longer need to sort of like, you know, check myself against another, just to make sure that I'm continuing to progress, that, you know, I am continuing to, you know, grow my goals and desires, and then I'm moving forward. So I think it's very important that you know, nurture those relationships, build your network, and grow your network.
That was awesome. We have a question from Katie, which I feel is really pertinent to right now. She is a new grad from TCU who just graduated with a degree in business information systems. And what advice do you have for new grads entering the job market right now? She feels like she's competing against the world. What can set her apart?
I think I'll jump in. Sorry. I think for new grads, I mean, you have to think about being yourself, right? When we go and do our hiring panels, and you know, our the days where we have people come in and there's like 40 different managers that they have to meet with, we're all excited about the ones that come in with their story and they're very genuine about, I mean, it could be something like behind a lemonade stand, you know, it could be something about their unique experience at boarding school. It can be something about their unique experience within ministry at church, but it's just coming in with your own story and being very unapologetic about that. And, you know, having that energy, right? And having something to prove for yourself, and having those goals already outlined. I think that's what's most moving for us. That's what's most impactful. We walk away from those days like, oh gosh, I remember that story that they told me. I was extremely excited about their enthusiasm. So it's of course, you know, making sure that you get your internships and under your belt and such, but for the most part, it's you having a story that you're excited about, and you having goals that are outlined, that you know, you have some defined steps to try and achieve those.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off what Tam said. Like, whenever you go into an interview, like, what is the one thing that they're going to remember you for? And I'll share an example from when I was in college. So when I was like prepping for interviews, I had previously done humanitarian work in Thailand, and I had helped women like learn how to raise chickens and all that to provide for their families. So my advisor said, you're going to be the chicken girl. They're going to remember you as the chicken girl. That's what she did. And own it. So have your one thing that they will remember you for, and always like just go in there. This is who I am. That's going to be my story. And you'll be able to stand out that way. You have to have that one thing to set you apart.
That's phenomenal. Thank you.
I love that, Kristen. That's great. We are going to do a quick poll, and then we have a question that I think we're going to touch on while the poll is being answered. So we have a question from Helen T. How is Adobe managing hiring in this distancing environment and onboarding interns who are likely being on teams completely virtually?
I'll take that one. since we are actually living this today, right now, we are lucky enough to have 30 interns joining us this summer. Some might actually be on this call. And we're very excited to actually be doing this as our first virtual internship. It will all be completely virtual. And the key is creating collaboration and still building relationships. You're hearing a lot of the same messages in the first half hour of this, right? It's creating connections, building those relationships, and giving them exposure to leaders and to peers that can set them apart and help them find that right path. So Adobe is positioned well in the market with the COVID going on, that our services and software are actually needed by all of the other companies that are facing this, right? We transform businesses, we help create experiences, right? And we do this in a very digital way. And this platform is making us in a unique opportunity to continue to offer positions for both full-time and internships over the summer. And yeah, they're going to onboard in a virtual environment. The beauty of technology, right? I feel just as connected to Michaela and Alexa as I do to Christine and Kristen and Tamra. And we're all sitting here in the same unique situation, getting to know each other, which will happen across any of those new hire positions you have. How's that poll? Let's check those answers there. Have you identified what sets you apart? It looks like a good majority, 42%, are saying yes. That's awesome. I think let's talk a little bit about those maybes and I think so's. One thing I'd like to share is it changes, right? What sets you apart? I would say what set me apart in my 20s and what sets me apart in my 40s is not the same, right? And that's okay because we evolve. And I think what you've heard from Tamara and Kristen and Christine is that it's having that identified and being able to share that message that's the most important thing. It doesn't have to be perfect every single time. You don't have to have it match anyone else. It is unique to you. So make certain that you're aware and proud of what sets you apart and you can tell that story. I think that's pretty great. Hopefully we'll help you with that.
Yeah, I would actually like to add to that. I mean, I think as I'm viewing some of our candidates, even for like internal candidates for a promotion or either, looking into other departments, they sometimes struggle with saying like, I'm not sure if I understand what sets me apart. Sometimes what sets you apart can be the same thing that somebody else is going to say, right? But you just have to have your own story behind it, right? So if it's the fact that you're extremely organized or, you have just this like internal knack to connect with the prospect and really understand what they need. It doesn't mean that there aren't 5 other people that might say the same thing a little bit differently. It just means that you have something to back it up. You've got, a couple of examples in your back pocket. You've got a cool story. It could be that, you are not, to Christine's earlier story, like that you're not the car salesman, that's, you don't even know how to speak that octave, but that you're actually kind of quiet, that you're more of an introvert, and that's your unique, differentiator in the reasons why that's actually been successful or impactful to some of your prospects. It could be anything. Just know that you just have to have your own unique story to that.
I love that. Christine, I want to talk about kind of that transition from contributor to leader, right? So kind of how did you know when it was time for you to move into leadership?
So it kind of ties into, my strength of realizing what my strength was. And so as I mentioned, I started my career in account management, and I realized how much I loved following process, analyzing, reports and what was working and not working in these ad campaigns and knocking down tasks. I loved all of that. And as I progressed into being a seller, I realized how much of that experience and what I loved, I took that and combined with my sales skills, ultimately helped me build that sales machine. And I ended up being more interested and got more energy out of that machine and helping others build that machine as they onboarded. Because I ended up being that seller where, a new hire would start and they would say, you're going to sit with Christine for 2 weeks and learn her machine and what she does and to build the foundation. And then on top of that, they would bring in, their sales uniqueness. But their machine was always working. And so I realized that as my energy kind of, became that focus, I knew it was time that I was getting less energy from the actual customer and more energy from building the machine and helping others get, going on their development. And so I just, at that point, it was time to pursue management.
It's great. I love leveraging your strength and identifying how it can transition with you. Tamara, as a leader of leaders as well, talk to me about your leadership philosophy and how you lead your team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the leader of leaders and also leading my individual contributors is kind of similar. Leader of leaders and hiring other leaders, I think about, just trying to be honest with myself. And I don't remember if I mentioned this at the beginning. I think I always try to just be myself, right? If it's goofy or whatever it is, but it's also understanding like it's okay to hire to your weaknesses as well. So I think one of the things I'm good at is understanding what I'm good at and understanding what maybe I'm not as, impassioned about. And so those are the areas that I want to try and like build on, right? And have somebody else sort of manage and huddle around. So that's kind of a philosophy there on leaders. But in terms of my team, I think, all the things that I gravitate to, just being human, being relatable. I'm very, especially managing individual contributors as well. I'm very family style. I feel like it's like no man left behind, no woman left behind. We all win as a team, we lose as a team. So if we have that at the core, then we can all crowd around one another and put pressure on one another and also encourage one another. I like to give very clear expectations around what I'm looking forward to. So to my earlier story around just sort of understanding where's the finish line and what's going to make you happy, what's going to make my boss happy, what's going to make the business happy, understanding what those expectations are. And then just providing regular feedback and coaching, I think is very important. And then of course, this took a little bit longer to develop, but understanding that honest feedback in both directions is 100% necessary. It's necessary for whoever it is you're managing. It inspires them, it makes them feel safe. And then it's also important for my own growth, right? So I think those are the main things, the core pillars for me on my management style.
It's fantastic. Thank you. And Kristen, in thinking about your role, you touch so many departments at Adobe and, are required to kind of just pull so many people together to, make fantastic things happen like you do. Talk to me about how you're using your strengths to kind of create those collaborative teams and get people to work together.
So one thing that comes to mind is just gratitude and being really appreciative of everyone you're working with and their time. Because it's true, like in my role, you're constantly having to reach out to other people, have them come help and talk to our team and train our team. So if you're not really sincere and grateful for their time and, being appreciative, then, you can't just keep asking and asking. You have to, be willing to give and be willing to appreciate. So that's, I think, the first thing is just always, how do you, say thank you, and how do you reach out and really be sincere with the people you work with. The next thing, kind of picking up of Tamara, when you're working with these new hires, I always try to have that level of vulnerability with them and share my past mistakes. I always come in and just kind of dropping your guard and just be like, let me tell you what I did one time. Let me tell you about my mistake, because I don't want you to have that same one. And let me tell you, I think I have made all the mistakes that you can at Adobe. And so I just want to be open with them and share that. And then it kind of just has that like sense of like, okay, they're like not going so stressed, like, when they're first there, because they have someone who's been totally transparent with them. And then I hope, that somehow, because of I've shared that, they won't make those same mistakes. So those are my two things.
I love that. That is fantastic. And I love that it sums it up in one word, gratitude. It's amazing to watch Kristen ask for help from all those around her at Adobe. People jump in line, shout, and raise their hand all the time. She is fantastic at collaborating and being thankful for those that do help. They can see that appreciation. Let's talk a little bit about like mentors and sponsors, right? kind of talk to me a little bit, Kristen, name some leaders in the org, right, who you are emulating and collaborate with. Christine and Tamara aside, who else are you working with and why?
So one thing I do want to kind of call out here, when, like I mentioned before, when I started as an intern, when I came up my first day, I was the only girl on that sales floor. And so the past 6 years, being able to see the huge initiative that Adobe has put on hiring women has been like just such a breath of fresh air for me, and just so empowering for me, because I came in and I didn't have that mentor, right? Like I didn't know where to turn, because I just didn't, I was the only girl. And so then coming in, and then when we did hire Christine and Tamara, we had Shannon Maxwell, who was the first female leader that I interacted with, and actually seeing her come in and just have this really strong and unapologetic voice was just so empowering to me. And just like seeing her like never having a filter, and I was like, wow, like that's impressive. And just really being able to learn. And then now, I report to Jessica, and being able to have her be a really strong female role model, like I just feel so blessed. And I feel like I'm really able to have the comparison of having no one to now having all of these women. Just having that has been really amazing to see. And then it's helped me understand the importance of it, right? Because it is so important to have those leaders, to be able to learn from them, and then to come in and try to emulate them.
Love that. Adobe does a great job of, offering mentorship. And Christine, you had mentioned the Leadership Circles program that you've been fortunate to be a part of. Kind of talk to me about how that's helped you create a mission or a vision statement.
Yes. So I think what this program really, had us do is really stop and take a look at, what do I care about? What's bogging me down? What are my challenges? Like what's going on today? And, what are my goals for the future? What do I care about? And so the program really helped us, again, to stop. And so in that, we actually wrote a personal mission statement or vision. And so I'll read that to you right now. And it took a lot of different iterations, and I think there'll be more iterations as I go through my career. But I strive to be a role model who leads with energy and passion to create a culture of trust and innovation to drive the business forward. I will stay grounded in my values and be an advocate for myself, my team, and my career. And one of the biggest things that got me to this statement was finding that one word. What is that one word that really stood out in all of the different bullet points that I wrote down of what do I care about? Who am I? And it was advocacy. And I think that it really ties into what I do today. I advocate for my people all day long. Our goal is to help them develop and advocate to get them into that next role as quickly as possible. And I think, we find it also in working with our different account teams. I'm always advocating for my team to be involved, to learn a new skill set, to win the business in some capacity. But then I also started to reflect on, okay, that's about other people, which is really important to my day-to-day as a manager, but what's important to me? And it was advocacy. And so, I want to advocate for me and what I'm doing and for my career. Don't be afraid to ask for that next thing. Don't be afraid to go in there and say, here are all the things that I've done. What do I need to do better and develop on? And, what else do I need to do to get to that next step? And again, fighting for where I feel like I should stand in the business. And so, I think advocacy was my word, but I think it took me writing down all the things that I cared about in my job from a personal standpoint, as well as from a career standpoint.
I love that. It's a very powerful word, and it does sum you up quite well. Let's jump to a poll and ask, how many of you actually have a mission statement, right? It's one of those things that you don't really think about putting forth when you're growing and developing in your career. You've got enough to do on your own. So, but as you've heard from Christine, it definitely makes a difference in how you point yourself in that direction in which you're taking your career. So let's kind of hear from you as well. And while that poll's going on, Tamara, tell me, what is your definition of success?
Sorry, looking for the unmute button. It's interesting. I don't think I can answer that question any better than Kristen and Christine have, without sounding too repetitive. You know, 100% the same way that you answered in the beginning to one of the previous questions, that the answer to this question has changed for me. It's shifted for sure over the years. And it used to be like, I really want to make my parents proud of me. You know, I want to look myself in the mirror and be very proud because I push myself, really hard. But now I think my definition of success is 100% on the impact that I have on others that I'm responsible for, and those that I don't even see watching me, right? So I think that's my definition of like, every day, rather if it's a young male or if it's a group of women, have you paid it forward? Have you paid it back? And are you trying to fight and remove obstacles for other people, right? So in any walk of life, I think that's kind of how I continue to check myself in the mirror nowadays. I'm sure my position might change. I might move into something else in a few years. I'm not 100% sure exactly what that might look like. But in terms of success, I mean, obviously it's such a broad thing, but I think the responsibility for me lies on my impact on others and trying to get people to where they're trying to go, right? So that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what might keep me up at night. Like, did I drop the ball for this one person? Did I do all I could for this other person? Just being a good example. So I love, what was previously said, but I think, I just have to kind of add to that with some of the same. It's literally just making sure that I'm a good example and I'm doing what I can to have the best impact on others.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Looking at this poll results, it looks like most of you do not have a personal mission statement, right? That's not shocking. I would highly recommend you do two things. One, find that mentor or sponsor, right, that can help you identify what your unique strengths are, help you understand what sets you apart, that story that you can tell, and then create that mission statement. Where do you want to take your career, and what's your definition of success? What I loved about the answers we're hearing from these ladies is there is nothing about, I hit President's Club, I did X amount percentage of plan, I sold this big deal. It had nothing to do with the quantifiable data that keeps us all secure in our sales jobs every day. It's not how we're defining success. That is not where we're seeing our careers. It's the impact, the advocacy, the help, right? The gratitude. That's what we're focusing our careers on and what's driving the success of these wonderful ladies. So if I can offer one word of advice, that was a very long word, go find your mentor and create your own personal mission statement. Okay, I know we're getting close to the end of time, so I'm going to open it back up to questions from the group here. What can we answer?
Thank you guys all for that insight. That was really impactful and really great to hear. I definitely need to write down my own mission statement right now. But we have a question from Dimitri asking, how do you keep your teams positive and motivated, especially now during COVID-19?
It's a great question. Christine, I'm going to point this one right at you. You've got a very large team. How are you handling that? And maybe not Christine. It looks like she might be frozen there.
I mean, I can speak up. It's hard. It's really, really hard if I'm being very honest with you. COVID has hit us all upside the head in a different way. I mean, we're all sort of trying to figure it out. I think the most important thing for a leader, especially a leader in sales right now, is to have empathy and also be willing to roll up your sleeves and get into the trenches even more than you were before. So I find myself right now Instead of just focusing 100% on the numbers, like, okay, so we talk about linearity at Adobe week over week. We've got 13 weeks in a quarter, and that's typically the conversation that we're having in a one-on-one. But instead of focusing on that, because the entire world has changed, right? I want to focus on what at the top of the funnel, like what's your output, right? So what are the activities? Let's get creative, right? Let's talk about the messaging. Let's talk about the tone. And then let's also talk about the volume, right? Let's talk about just really honestly, it's just shifting the conversation and getting much more intimate as a manager into each one of the accounts of each person that I'm managing. And just allowing them to know that the world is feeling this pain. And then alongside of that, we try to do like different spiffs. We try to understand what motivates people. I think that's one of the most important questions that you can be ready to answer to yourself on what motivates you, and then also in an interview, because it's what a manager really needs to get to know as they take someone onto their team, right? What are the levers that I need to pull and adjust in order to get this person excited, to keep them going, to keep them involved? And so it's not one size fits all as a manager. Every single person is motivated by a different thing. Some people, you know, if they hit this goal, maybe they want to work from home, or they want to have the day off on Friday. You know, if they hit this other goal, maybe somebody wants an email to the rest of the organization saying that they did really good. So it just really depends. But I mean, in all honesty, like, it's hard. It's really, really hard right now. And people are frustrated. You know, they are, you know, really just pushing themselves in different ways. But it's just about creativity and understanding that your manager is there, they have your back, and that they're willing to get in there with you.
That's awesome. We have a question from Marjorie that's really interesting. Do you guys have any tips on how to work in an extremely patriarchal society, like in a company that's not as amazing as Adobe and supports their women?
I'll talk a little bit about my experience. You know, I came from a medical staffing background, and I was the only female in sales in that environment for a good few years with that team. And I think, you know, the ladies covered this at the beginning, especially Tamara, but like, you kind of need to have that chip on your shoulder and that extra hustle that Kristen talked about. You've got to really put it out there. But being organic in yourself. I am also not a golfer. I cannot talk about golf, and I don't want to go do, you know, the golf outing with the boys. I don't want to be the guy, right? I want to be the powerful female that I am. And so it's having that confidence to showcase who you are and remember your strengths, what makes you unique, and just keep going forward. If you're authentic and genuine, then you know what, they're going to see it, or you're going to change, right? You're going to leave, they're going to miss out on that great opportunity, or they're going to acknowledge what you're offering. And I think the amplification and the whole shine theory is proof of that, right? Obama's White House staff is the perfect example of how that happened. And we're all trying to do the same.
Thank you. Do you have any questions on your end, Alexa?
Yes, we have a question asking about if you've received feedback about being over positive in meetings in the past, and do you adjust your tone differently based on who's in the room for meetings?
I can answer that one. So I wouldn't say positive would be the word that I've had describe me, but I think it applies for, you know, many different tones that you can have. I would say mine might be overly passionate. And so, yeah, it always depends on who's in the room. You definitely need to cater your tone to who's in the room. And that's not because of gender or anything like that, you know, of who's in the room. I think it's more so about a representation of yourself and what you're trying to convey. You know, if I'm talking to my management team and or my boss, you know, that's more of a conversational, let's get some of the passion out about things that we care about. As I mentioned, you know, if something's broken in the process. But, you know, if I'm going to have a skip level meeting, at that rate, I need to lead with the headline and get straight to the point, because their passion is not going to align necessarily with mine. And so I need to be able to identify what's the headline, what's the goal and action within this conversation, and the takeaway that I want that person to leave with. So through lots of coaching, and I would say having your peers really be honest with you. But I think what you have to do is ask them for feedback, be honest with you and what you could have done differently in a meeting. So I've definitely leaned on Jess and Tamara and said, oh gosh, you know, how did I come across in that meeting? What can I do differently? And you have to ask for that feedback so that you're very aware of the perception of what other people have. And then it's growing on that and getting some coaching of, well, what would you have done differently? And then from there, you know, working with my manager on the same thing and then managing up. So not necessarily positivity, but I think it applies. And so, yeah, definitely make sure that cater to the room, but it's based off of what you're looking for as the key takeaways.
Yeah, I would just, I would add, like, that's really amazing, Christine. Having the awareness of the culture, right? And knowing that every company has its own culture of how to communicate, and doing your due diligence, and also being continuously learning, like, okay, this is the right time to say this. This is actually the right time to perk up. This is not the right time to do that or say that. This is not the right audience to say that. Maybe I should send this email, but not copy these 50 people on there. So it's just understanding the culture, being aware, but still leaning in, right? Still making sure that you're getting your point across and being impassioned, but just like being aware.
Thank you both for that so much. Unfortunately, we have a hard stop, but I just want to say you guys are amazing. You're the reason that we can have topics like this, and the reason why women can shine and really amplify each other. And it shows that you guys really do make a great culture at Adobe, and you're the reason for all of these things. And we're so, so grateful to have spent the hour with you guys. Let's not stop the conversation here, though. Please follow us on LinkedIn. We are going to be looking at comments for more questions that we may not have been able to answer. And we'll have our next series. We have some really exciting things coming up with the webisodes and podcasts. So follow us on LinkedIn, and we're really excited about the possibilities. Thank you all for attending. This was amazing.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. This was a privilege. Thank you.